Okay.
Good morning, everyone. This is Carl Dakin, and this is the Successful Funding Show. For those of you who are new to the show, this is a discussion for approximately 1 hour with somebody of importance. This morning, it's Andy Sherbo, and we talk about funding. We typically talk mostly about small business and community projects for funding, and everything's open for discussion. But one of the fun things about this particular show is that we get to invite the audience to participate. So anyone who's watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook can join into the conversation with a question or comment throughout today's program. With that, this is an unscripted show. So we don't have to get any particular points across during the time that we have. Andy and I are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is entrepreneurial education. And Andy is with the University of Denver. He teaches entrepreneurial finance. I get to lecture in his class and come in and mess with everybody's heads at least once a year.
It's
And
well done, though. It's very well done. To the audience, he's a great supporter of DU. We really enjoy having Carl as a faculty guest lecturer.
Yeah,
so great job. Great job.
Appreciate that, Andy. And then now I'm, as an adjunct professor, I'm putting together a group and taking students down to the country of Belize once a year, where we do comparative analysis between doing business in the US and doing it in Belize. And it's a bit of a mind jog bumper kind of a thing for all the students to realize that everything they thought they knew about business isn't quite the same worldwide. Yeah. And that's the point. Yeah. So with that, as I said, we have with us in the audience already, Gary. Gary loves to tell jokes. So I'm going to start with letting Gary get us kicked off this morning. He says, French dip puns, the dip in French culture, that's a juice for everyone. I'm afraid my ability to speak French is not going to help us here. So anyway, hopefully more people understood the joke than I did. But with that, Andy has been with the university. He's got all kinds of acknowledgments and awards for teaching students about entrepreneurship and particularly finance. So Andy, if you would provide a little bit more background about who you are, how you got to be where you're at today. And then the question of the day is, what's the state of the art in teaching finance to students today?
Well, thanks, Carl. Again, thanks for all your support that you provide our university here. Background: so 26 years active duty in the Air Force, and was in the money business. That's what I did: finance business, budgeting, stuff like that, all over the world. Dealt in different currencies. And Carl's right. I mean, he takes these students down to Belize, which is the former British Honduras, I think. Am I correct on that, Carl? So. Yeah. It's just a mind-boggling what I've been through in my career, and continue to learn. I tell my students, what you learn is what you learn when you're out of class. That's when you're really going to be tested on it. But anyway, so that's my background, and then I've been we did the corporate stuff for a while, and then about I think maybe 10 years ago, decided just to do teaching full time, which I really enjoy. And again, we've got people like Carl out there coming in guest lecturing, makes it all the more better for the students. And that's what this is about. It's about the students. So anyway, that's my background. And so in the business world, I dealt a lot with Defense Department budgeting, stuff like that. Small businesses in the Defense Department. We have small business set-asides. These are big in contracts. Now, you're not going to build an F-35 fighter on a small business contract, but there's a lot of other stuff out there that we do. Okay, just local procurement and items like that. That's basically small business set-asides. It's a certain percent we have to do according to Congress. So that's a growing business, and so I spent some time doing that. Enjoyed it, and as far as the state of teaching and finance, well, I tell you, it's so global now, Carl, that you just can't focus on the U.S. anymore. You compete around the world right now. you might have a product you think's going to sell. Well, somebody else on the other side of the world can maybe make it at a lower cost and better quality. So that's a big issue right now, I think, in regards to small businesses. You can buy stuff on the internet anywhere in the world. So it's just changed so much. Just changed so much. And I think in the future, what we're going to see is more demand on technology. That's big. If you don't have technology, you're going to be out of business, and expansion worldwide. So those are two big things I think that we're emphasizing here at the University of Denver. I know in the class I teach, Carl, you come in kind of at the beginning, set the stage, and then we expand beyond that, including the regulatory climate, which obviously is going to be changing here pretty soon with the new president taking over, and he's going to extend the tax cuts. I think that's a done deal. They're supposed to expire about 13 months from now, December 31st, 2025. Now, one of the provisions in there, it goes back to Trump's 27 tax cut. That's almost 8 years ago, 2017, was a qualified business income deduction, which is a 20% deduction for small businesses. There's some income limits on that. But basically, if you have $100,000 in profits, they would be taxable. You take 20% off of that. This morning's Wall Street Journal was talking about that on page 1. I read it a few minutes ago. There's some deficit issues, but I think what you're seeing right now is going to be intact beyond 2025. Carl, I think that's pretty much a done deal on that. But there are some issues with the deficit, and we'll have to face that like they do every year with the continuing resolutions and all that crap going on. I do a lot of those things. But anyway, yeah. So again, Carl, that's kind of looking at from my perspective as a teacher, and more of a practitioner than a teacher.
Yeah, so I'd also like to say hello to Don Cohen, who's joined our audience this morning. Don is an expert on using LinkedIn, and particularly LinkedIn Live, like this show. We broadcast it from a studio called Restream, which is similar to Vimeo and a variety of other platforms. And the benefit of that is that we can dual broadcast this to multiple social media platforms at the same time. So a lot of the people I invited to come watch the show on LinkedIn, but you can also watch it on Facebook and YouTube. And the other good thing is once this show is over, if you enjoyed it, you can watch reruns over and over and over again. So it's recorded and stored online, and you can find this particular show in my profile on LinkedIn, and you can also search it, keyword search it on YouTube and Facebook. So it's there for a long, long time. So I'm going to be asking Andy for words of wisdom as we go through today. And then afterwards, back to more technology. We put this into Opus AI, and we take out clips, and we also take out the transcript of the words that are spoken during today. And then I load those into this new project of mine, which is CAP. This is an artificial intelligence avatar that's on my webpage. And if you scan this QR code, it'll take you directly to the source without having to go through my webpage, that it will answer any question you have about funding. So it's free. I invite everybody to go there. And every week after we get done, we take all the newsletters I publish during the week and all the shows like this one, and we add them to CAP. That's called training the avatar. And it can answer questions about what was in the show today. So keep that in mind and try that out. So Andy, there's so many topics today that we could talk about in terms of finance. And one of the questions that's come up recently falls under the banner of financial literacy. And ordinarily, this is referred to as the capability of an individual to manage their own personal financial affairs. But the term is getting expanded. And from one perspective, I'm concerned about our businesses financially literate, particularly small businesses. And then a recent project of mine dealing with community investment funds, we're asking the question, are people literate about the wealth of the communities they reside in? And do they understand the economics of money flowing in and out of these communities that contribute to the wealth of those communities. So, how do you see financial literacy today? And how are
Yeah.
just take off on that topic?
Yeah, well, I also teach a class of personal finance,
Okay.
and that class is maxed out in enrollments every time. I have them do a little quiz. FINRA, are you familiar with FINRA at all? Some people are. Financial regulatory. Basically, they control the securities industry, okay? Stockbroker, stuff like that. People like me. I'm also a certified financial planner. So, registered investment advisor, that stuff. And at the beginning of the class, we go to the website, and there's 7 questions that are asked. They're basic questions, Carl. The average national correct answers is 3.2. That's less than half. It's not good out there. It just isn't. And so you combine the entrepreneurial finance class that you speak to and my personal finance class, it's just a huge gap out there. It's just not very good, quite frankly. Is it getting better? Marginally. I'd say the one thing people just need to understand about is the time value of money. That's the thing they got to get down solid. It's not that difficult. You got spreadsheets that can do that and stuff like that. There's so much online now. I show the students what's online right now, and it's not good. It's just not good, Carl. So, as a matter of fact, they asked me here at DU to teach a class to the non-business school students. These are like people who major in English literature and stuff like that. And that class is starting next in January, winter quarter, Carl, when I'm teaching the entrepreneurial finance class, and that's getting a huge enrollment on it too. So it's not good. And every time I look at these studies and what's going wrong, it gets worse. As a CFP, I do some pro bono work. It's just sad, Carl. It really is. So what's my answer to that? We just got to get more education out there. It needs to start at the high school level, okay? And a lot of finance students, quite frankly, don't understand the time value of money as well they should. Hate to say it, but I tell them, if you don't have time value of money and understand that, that's like me going to a medical doctor and saying I need my blood pressure checked, and the doctor says, blood pressure, what the hell's that? I'm not, it's that bad out there. It's just a huge gap, Carl. I maybe went a bit long on that, but I did teach at Aurora Tech. I may be off a little bit on the name of the school out there. It's a STEM school up by the old Lowry Air Force Base. No, up by somewhere out there. Sorry about that. I forget where it was at. And those students, they were asking very tough questions, tougher questions than my DU students are asking. And these are would they be high school students, maybe 15, 16 years old. So I was glad to see that from the STEM side. So it's not good. It's not good. Less than 50% out of 7 questions. The average national is 3.2, correct? That's how bad it is.
According to, I was looking at those stats last week because of this question that had come up. And the 2024 results were less than half the adults out there could get the score. And what was worse was Gen Z was 37% as opposed to 50%. So the trend is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And these questions, in my mind, unfortunately, were very, very simple. As you say, time value of money. If you put money in a savings account, are you going to get more money back? Why? If you put money in a stock, are you going to get more money back? Why? And what's come up recently, which is driving kind of this, is we are working with what we call economically distressed or underserved communities. And we're talking about building wealth because what has happened is the economic activity of a particular community has gone elsewhere. The market shifted, something changed, and suddenly what's happening is within a geographic area, these communities are exporting their wealth rather than building wealth. And when we get into conversations with community leaders, with economic developers, and so forth, we have found that not only do they not understand this, but it is often misunderstood. So I was at the State Economic Development Conference here in Colorado a few weeks ago, and a significant portion of the overall programming was on recruiting a store like a Burger King or some other type of store to come into a small rural community. And nobody asks the question about where does the profits go from the operation of that business. And they all leave the community. They do not stay in the community. And therefore, every time that somebody buys something within one of these stores, they are exporting money from the community. And at a community level, you can only do that so long unless you happen to have a very vibrant community. And most rural communities don't fall in that category. And when we see it in an urban area, what happens is you have a bunch of apartments where people do not own the place they live in. The businesses are all way down the road, meaning that you have to drive or get a bus or something to go to the grocery store or pick up anything to buy. And it turns out there's no local jobs, there's no local revenue generation within the community. This community is essentially a support branch for some other community somewhere else. And then they go, well, why is it our streets are not fixed? Why is it we don't have safety protection? Why are our schools not doing so good? And the answer is because there are no taxes being paid by businesses in your backyard. So the only people paying taxes are the landlords for the apartments that you do not own, and that's not enough to cover the bill. So we're seeing that the concept of financial literacy at a community level is very important for all the underserved, disinvested communities across the United States. And the average person, as you put it, is struggling to balance their checkbook to understand even the simple employer contribution to a retirement fund type of a thing, because what we've done is we've stripped all this decision making out of the individual's hands, and we put it in somebody else's hands. And then over 80 years before the passage of investment crowdfunding under the Jobs Act, we basically told people they were too stupid to manage their own affairs and somebody else would have to do that for them. And this thought process, which is completely wrong and bogus, continues just to permeate all the thinking, all the legislation, even the investments today are all based on this. So I came across an interesting statistic. So we're going to bounce around a little bit here today, but I was trying to determine how big crowdfunding had come, and I found a statement from Crowdwise that said that they had in 2020 approximately 360,000 individuals participated in investment crowdfunding, which was just 4 years after the rules were released. It's 4 years ago now, so I'm trying to find some newer stats. But what was interesting is entrepreneurs are almost commonly taught to go find their risk capital from angel investors. Mm-hmm. And I found a study from a group in, let's see if I got this right. Here it is, the Center for Venture Research at the University of New Hampshire. And according to them, in 2020, out of the 19 million people who would qualify as accredited investors based on their income or wealth, only 370,000 of them invested. So the numbers of people investing through crowdfunding, which allows everybody 18 or older to invest, are probably now surpassed the total number of wealthy people who invest. And so the market is a changing. And I was surprised by seeing these numbers. I suspected them, but I hadn't found a study yet which had tried to tabulate just how many people who are wealthy actually invest in businesses and help get them started. And the number was even smaller than I suspected. So what I see happening going forward is that people are going to recognize that everybody has an ability to invest now through investment crowdfunding. And this is going to shift who's an investor, how they invest, what they understand and know about a business that may be down the road. And I'm hoping that this will contribute to financial literacy, to what I call small business investing literacy, and to community investment literacy. So, in your course on entrepreneur finance, what do you talk about when it comes to investment crowdfunding today?
Well, I'm not, Corey, I remember when I asked you a question there. You were with the Colorado State Crowdfunding Act, right? You were part of that, correct, sir? And I remember we talk about it a little bit, but it just hasn't taken off as much as it should have, right, Carl? There's been some issues there with the crowdfunding, getting it set up.
Yeah, there's a number of issues with crowdfunding which hold it back. And I'll say the Colorado Act, which we got amended 4 times after we
Yep,
passed it in 2015,
yep, 2015, that's right.
we finally created a little bit of a loophole. Herrick Lidstrom led this effort. And if you're raising $500,000 or less, then you don't have to use an intermediary crowdfunding platform, which adds to complexity and adds to the cost to raise. You don't have to use an escrow agent, which also unnecessarily contributes to the cost of capital. And you can adjust your offering so that you can set the minimum dollar amount at zero and take best efforts, anything that comes in the door, all the way up to $500,000. And this simplifies the crowdfunding system immensely because it takes a lot of the bureaucracy and the associated cost out of the picture. That anything above $500,000 in Colorado, I recommend people go to the federal Reg CF crowdfunding because it's simpler, easier, quicker to do. Because at the federal level, the intermediaries are allowed to be paid on a commission basis or a success fee, where at the state level, it's got to be a flat fee. They're not allowed to participate in the offering. And that automatically puts this out of reach for almost any third party to make a profit. You might see a nonprofit step into this, but not so far. I'm actually the only person active in Colorado right now trying to move forward local crowdfunding in Colorado. And I'm working with a group in Montrose, Colorado today for an offering that hopefully will be ready to go in the next few weeks for a small meat processing plant to service the ranchers of Western Colorado. But this process, as simple as it's supposed to be, is overwhelming most businesses because of the forms, the data, the information that needs to be put into it. And then when you tell them that they have to jump left and right at the same time to get through the bureaucracy that's there, it basically scares people away. It seems like it's too much, too hard for them to do. And I struggle with crowdfunding at a national level, even though, because we have all these laws that were put into place, supposedly consumer protection laws to protect people from making bad investments. And yet the average person is out there buying a car, $35, $45, $50,000, and they're buying houses averaging over $300,000. And the law is telling them that they have to jump through all these hoops to make a $100 investment in a business down the street. It's insane. It is the current situation. The last or current SEC administrator talked about this problem and did nothing about it during the current administration. I don't know that I'm necessarily hopeful that there is going to be an improvement in this going forward, but we have an artifact from the 1930s of an accredited investor. This is a person who is so wealthy that the government says they don't need any government protection, they can take care of themselves. But what they've done is they've said that this applies to people who have $1 million net worth, excluding their primary house, or they're making $200,000 a year. This is only 3% of the population. And even though the SEC is claiming it's 18% because they're using household income, husband and wife or partners. This, as a practical matter, I still joke, if you ever go ask your partner to approve an investment you want to make, take your time because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah.
but these are all things that are holding back the investment crowdfunding market. They're holding back local businesses, the small businesses who every day have more taxes, more rules, more regs to conform with, are not getting a break on the fundraising side. And at the same time, as we discussed earlier, the person who's supposed to be making that a decision really isn't grounded. And I don't mean that they need to be sophisticated or they need to be able to make financial planning type of things, but they really are not being given the tools anywhere. So one of the stats I found a couple of weeks ago was that only 7 states in the United States at the high school level teach a semester-long course on financial literacy. So we're graduating people into college where they have to pay for everything about being independent and going to school and all the costs of going to school. And yet they're not given any of the tools that they should have been given in high school, possibly even in elementary school, to be citizens of their community, citizens of the world, and going forward.
Yeah, I would say, Carl, that your question about the literacy thing, the thing people need to know how to do is put together a business plan. That's what they need to know how to do it, what the elements of it are. And that includes their projection, a pro forma, balance sheet, income statement, about 5 years out. That's pretty standard. That's what you're doing. The class you helped me with, Carl, they have to put together a business plan. And marketing, the whole thing, technology, how you're going to be organized, LLC, you know how that drill goes. So that to me is number one. If you can't put together a business plan, you shouldn't be in business or start a business. Don't even think about doing that because you're digging a hole for yourself.
Well,
And
you're flying by the seat of your pants, and raising money is, and you're right though. But I've been through this so many times already this year. Of course, the year's getting to the back end, but
yeah,
you go to a business person, and I'm not talking about just startups. I'm talking about people who've been in business for years, and they're going, "Well, I want to raise some money." I said, "Okay, fine. Send me your pro forma, your cash
yeah,
flow
yeah, yeah,
projection
yep.
going forward." And they're like, "What?" And I go, I need that." And the first response is, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because you're trying to receive investment dollars, right?" And they're going, "Yeah." I said, "So someday you have to pay those back." And they're going, "Okay." I said, "Those have to be paid out of future profits. And we need to know what your future profits are to know
Yes,
what
sir.
share of the company to give up to get the investment." This is 101 basic information. And yet, I will say, unfortunately, that this comes up almost every time. It's very rare that I have someone who walk in and go, "Oh yeah, here's my 5-year cash flow projection, and it's solid, and I can stand on it without worrying that there's goofiness, creeping into it." And goofiness is seeing the future without knowing how to get there. It's kind of like a donkey following a carrot, and it keeps following the vision, but it actually doesn't know where it's going. It's just following the carrot. And yeah, a business plan is good. And I will go one step further. After the cash flow projection is done, the thing that's missing is a paint by number kit for getting from where you're at today to the goal that you've set in your cash flow projection, on allocating all the work at a level of detail that it can be performed by the person who is given and has accepted responsibility for that task. This is the problem. I will call it my number 2 problem. Is people go, "Great, we've got a cash flow projection." I go, "Okay, who's doing the work? Who's belling the cat?" Uh, I want to know who's doing it. I want you to define each task I want a description. I want a metric of success. I want accountability. I want to know what happens if you don't meet your metric. And again, I get a lot of silence, crickets, and
Mm.
and so I'm going. So what you're telling me is you're going to start a business with an unknown amount of money to go towards an unknown goal, where you may require more funding than you have in your back pocket, and you don't know how you're going to get there. You're just assuming that somehow someone's going to come in and buy something that you may or may not have built, may not even have developed yet, and we don't know. So yes, I could go off for hours on the challenges of getting somebody lined up as a business person in a business format that would qualify for funding before we even get to the marketing side of raising money.
And also, I think that in the business plans we do in the class I teach, what's your ROI? What's your minimum ROI that you want? Now, most venture capitalists, at least our textbook discusses this, and I'm an accredited investor. I've been on the VC side a lot, and not all of them work out. You're going to lose some money in this business. You just, nobody bats 1,000. But the rule of thumb normally is about at least 25% ROI. That's a minimum that you should probably be looking for. And most people say, I don't know, Carl, your experience, you ever ask them what your ROI, what your objective is? They probably don't even know that. They just want to make money. Well, how much? Look at the risk-free rate. You don't have to do this. Go with the risk-free rate. You get a CD. You're going to bring on 80-hour work weeks for what? For an ROI. And then it's just amazing. Oh, I didn't think about that. You didn't? And you wonder why you went out of business?
Well, it gets worse because if you pull up the statistics on the average ROI of a small business in the United States, it's under 11%.
Yep.
So when somebody says, I need a 25% ROI, return on investment, meaning that, let's give a real quick example. They invest $100 today, and at the end of 1 year, they want $125 back. That's a 25% ROI on a 1 year investment. But if the average business is only making 10, 11% profit, then how are they going to create a return that can match 25%? And the answer is they can't.
Yeah.
And so what we have, another failing in entrepreneurship, is understanding that most businesses will never qualify. That is, they will not achieve a high enough return on investment to attract angel money or VC money or anybody that's up the ladder who has to have this high rate of return. And statistically, and I still argue with people about this, my guess is less than 1/10 of 1% of all businesses can meet this kind of a threshold. So that means 99.9% of businesses should not match up with angel money or with VC money or private equity fund money because they can't.
They can't.
So their alternative is to work with debt financing, which, if they can get it, is cheaper than the other alternative, equity investment. But again, if you're making 11% money and you're paying 6, 7, 8% interest on the money you're borrowing, you have to keep this in proportion to your overall operations, or you end up upside down. And this happens a lot. So we get into, I'm a big statistics guy because I need to know what reality is, and I go through reality checks every day, trying to help different businesses position themselves to raise funding. So if they can't get money from a bank because they're too risky, too early stage, then who's going to give them money that has a reason to do so? And this is part of the reason why I like investment crowdfunding, because I can do things with the products and services of a business to fold them into a package that includes both equity or debt or revenue share and products at a discount, which allows the business to create an attractive combo in that regard. and potentially raise the money that they need to raise. If they can't get it there, then they have to get into what we call impact investing, where a benefit to a social good or to the community is viewed as a benefit to the investor in a way that they're willing to take a lower ROI in combination with a higher social impact. And this area is growing rapidly, but it's also, I'll call it unplowed ground coming from Kansas. I can speak in great detail about what plowed ground means. Uh, but the there's so many changes going on in the marketplace. You mentioned earlier, this is now an international marketplace. We have people moving money in and out of businesses all across the world. We have problems moving money across borders because of money laundering and dirty money and stuff like that. And then we have cryptocurrency, which Andy knows is a topic that causes me dismay. Um, that I one of the back to financial literacy question I'd like to have everybody explain is, do you know the difference between value and price? And my position is that cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which has no underlying asset behind it, has zero value, even though the price is what, $7,000 a Bitcoin or something, or 70,000 this week. I
So
don't pay
it's up now.
Yeah, it's up. And the thing is, though, there's no value behind it. So it raises a question when somebody says, hey, look, I bought Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and it appreciated. Because I think the word appreciation should be limited to assets with value, not assets which a arbitrary price has been assigned to. More fun and games in the education area. So as you're teaching entrepreneurial finance, what's your biggest challenge other than the fact that you're handed a slate of students who maybe need to do some remedial learning?
Well, I tell you what, the first thing I come up with is what are you going to do? Just the idea and the concept. What's your not a business plan at this point, but take that concept and put it into a 20-page business plan with an Excel spreadsheet, ROI, marketing, and the organizational structure. That's the big leap. That's the big leap. Their ideas are pretty good. They come up with some really neat ones, I think. And I just cut them loose. I said, have at it. There's a blank sheet of paper. Give it a rip. And then once you come up with an idea, now put that into a 20-page business plan. That's the great leap forward. And they need help on that. I help them with as much as I can. But I can tell you this, it's still, that literacy thing is in the way a lot. And I go back to the time value of money, Carl. You got to have it. It's just the way it is. We mentioned the 25% rate of return that most VC have. Another thing too, I think
most VCs I've talked to want 200% annualized.
Well, the 25%, you're right. That's at the bottom.
It's more of an age-old threshold, but for individuals. But
yeah,
whatever.
Well, you got to beat the risk-free rate for sure. That's one thing I haven't looked at. And they said, "What's the risk-free rate?" I was like, "Come on, guys!" But that's the level we're at. Just that poor. So you say you get 6% return. Well, I almost get 5% of treasury security with no risk. So is that 1%, the 80-hour work week worth that 1%? No, it's not. It's just they don't even think about that. So that's the great leap forward. Good ideas, blank sheet of paper. Now put in a business plan, marketing, all the other stuff behind it. And that's when they have a little bit of trouble. And that's good because that's where the troubles are at, Carl.
Yeah, and if we want to complicate the decision making, we can throw inflation into this formula. Where over a year from now, I think the current rate of inflation is what 3.3% or something.
Close enough.
So if a year from now you invested in a company that went up 25%, your value of money also went down 3.3%. So you're only net yielding 22.7%. We're going to keep going through these numbers, but it does get interesting when you have fluctuating inflation rates. You have different costs in your supply chain over which you have less and less control because of the international elements of where did you buy this thing? Well, where was it originally manufactured? How many countries did it pass through? How many times did it get marked up? Can you assure it's going to be here tomorrow when I want it, when my customer wants it? Um, uh, and even in handling money, I have a PayPal transfer that supposedly went into my bank on the 4th. It's still not in my account where I can use it this morning, 8 days later, which is something I get to do is call the bank again, which acknowledged that they received the payment on the 4th, but they can't figure out why it's not in my account where it can do me some good. So even moving money back and forth, there's a cost associated with it. Another one of my big soapboxes I get on is credit card fees, which I think are an outrageously overpriced fee that Congress is unwilling to deal with, and it serves to extract money out of every business, regardless of the value of the service, regardless of its complexity or risk associated with it. And we pay it because we've become accustomed to giving up 3 to 5.5% per transaction
Mhm.
to someone in another state who doesn't care about you any more than processing your service. And we can talk about Square or PayPal or any of the credit card companies and how much they charge. And I keep going, why would you work so hard to earn 11% profit and just give up 3 to 5.5% of that to someone for moving, for receiving the payment?
Mhm.
It doesn't really make any sense. And that's the world we live in.
Yeah. The one thing also, Carl, you're one of my guest speakers every quarter. I also had the Small Business Administration come out, SBA, Small Business Administration, and they give a pretty good pitch. They really do. Of course, they loan money out. They're not in the equity business. That's what they do. And they make the
They,
point.
they, they don't loan much money anymore. It's guaranteed loans
Yeah,
through a
well,
finance.
they don't really. They're back at the loan. You know what I'm saying? They're back the loan. Yeah, they don't really. They just, but they're the ones that you couldn't. Otherwise, you couldn't get the money. The bank would. And what they point out, you go down to Wells Fargo, somebody like that, and there's an SBA person down there that knows how to do the paperwork to get all the stuff arranged so you can get the money from the SBA, the loan. Again, it's through the bank, we know that, but nonetheless, they give some pretty good seminars over there. And I sent one of my business plans to them, and they said, "My goodness, this would always get money from us, just the way it's laid out." So I told them, don't overlook the SBA and as a source. Carl, I don't know what your experience has been with them, but they give a pretty good pitch to my students.
Well, yeah, I started doing education programs for the SBA back in 1981, just to date myself a little bit. Uh, and The SBA at one time used to do direct lending, where you could apply directly to them for a loan. And they still do some very, very specialty type of loans. But by and large, what the SBA does is they work with a local bank.
Yep.
And when you go into the bank, you say, I want to borrow $100,000. And based on your credit rating by itself, you're not going to get that loan from the bank. And over the years, where the bank used to be able to loan to anybody anytime based upon a relationship between the bank and the small business, the feds have pushed them into a zero risk tolerance where they basically cannot make any loan that could potentially lose money. So they're almost the equivalent of a hard money lender, except they're cheaper. And in that regard, what happens is the SBA steps up and says, we'll guarantee 80% of the loan. So
Yep,
if there's
that's
a
right.
default, we'll put up 80 cents on the dollar for every dollar that the bank loses. And then the bank, because they're in a zero risk position, will tell the small business, then you need to come up with 20% of the money from somewhere else. It's got to be out of your own back pocket, or you've got to go out to an equity investor and get the 20%. If you get the 20%, then we'll loan you the money because the SBA is putting up 80% or guaranteeing 80%, and that gets us to 100% of the loan. Um, and so they provide a very valuable service by providing these loans and backing up small businesses across the United States. And I was trying to find some numbers for how many loans the SBA backed last year. It's a huge number because invariably most banks now, having no ability to take on any risk, require a loan guarantee from the SBA or
Yep.
the USDA or the Department of Commerce through EDA or some other program. And if you can't get that guarantee, you're not getting the loan. The only people who are getting loans with those kinds of guarantees are typically larger companies with major assets that have been around for a long time, so that they have something that reduces the risk to the bank. So the SBA works very hard to support small businesses. They have a variety of programs, educational things you can go to. You can drop in stuff online. They have explanations about a lot of the different rules and things that you have to conform to in order to do a particular type of business. So I'm a big advocate of the SBA. But a lot of the time where I'm dealing with raising money is trying to find that 20% so they can
Yeah.
qualify
They
for
go
the
to the
SBA
SBA.
loan.
Yeah. When they gave out and talked to the students, um, they watch Shark Tank a lot. They watch that stuff, okay? And I know you have a view on Shark Tank, but I said, look, if you get an SBA loan, they're not going to call you at 2 o'clock in the morning like Mr. Wonderful will. Why you didn't triple your sales today? They just want their money back. That's all they want. So they're not going to have any ownership issues. Okay, they don't do that. That's not what they're into. They're a loan. They back it. As you point out, get the 20% and let it rip from there, and with a good business plan. So that's a big difference. It's not sexy to to get the SBA involved like it is on Shark Tank, but it's a loan. It's different. It's a whole different ballgame. They don't want ownership. They just want the money back, the loan. That's it.
Right. Yeah, now if there is a default on payment of the loan, they will participate with the bank in selling your business and selling the
Yeah.
assets and
Well, you
paying off
didn't.
the loan. But they don't want control of your business. They don't want to
Nope.
run your business. They have absolutely no interest in running your business. Where when you take an equity investment from an angel private equity fund, your friend down the street, they often get it in their head that they can drive the car better than you can, and they want you to get in the passenger seat, and they want to drive the car. And sometimes they're right, but most of the time you don't want them taking over your business and telling you how to run the business. So it gets into a completely different game when you're taking an investment in equity, which gets into the ownership of a business versus taking out a loan. There are dozens of flavors of loans out there, from equipment loans to accounts
Yep.
receivable
Yep.
loans. We go through all those. I put out a daily newsletter on funding, and I've been doing a series on different sources of funding. I think I'm up to 24 or 25, and I've got about another 25 to go. Um, and it falls into all of these require, though, that the business has to make a profit. I got into a conversation with a nonprofit yesterday about economic sustainability, and I said, I'm helping get a new nonprofit launched. I said we're using a sustainability model, which a lot of charities are unhappy with. But I said we cannot be dependent upon charitable contributions to do what we need to do. So every day we need to have more money come in the door than we spent. It doesn't have to be a huge profit. It can be a fractional profit, but we still have to have enough money so we're here today to do the mission again tomorrow. And the guy goes, okay, fine. And but it's interesting when you work with nonprofits who should also be following time value of money,
Absolutely.
return on
That doesn't
investment.
stop there. You're right.
It doesn't stop. That's a tax designation. And if
That's it.
part of your
That's it.
money has to come from charitable donations, fine. but that means you have one group of customers you're servicing and a different group of customers you're raising money from, which makes the life of a nonprofit that much more challenging. Um, so going forward, what are you going to do, Andy? Plant your flag in the ground, and how are you going to make a difference in the world by teaching on young aspiring entrepreneurs financial elements, how to raise money, how to manage their money, do those kinds of things.
Tim, there's always risk. Okay. If you don't want risk, buy a CD, go to sleep tonight. Okay. Be happy with a 4% yield. And most of them don't want that. And so I point out that you don't get something for nothing. Okay. It just doesn't work that way in this world. And in my personal finance class, they take a risk tolerance test. It's about 10 questions. And a lot of them are shocked. And when they come back, I thought I could take more risk. I'm not as risky as I thought I was. It's almost unanimous on that. But I think 90% of them come back with a very low risk for tolerance, yet they want to make a lot of money. Well, guess what? Those two are going to collide. All right. And you got to understand that you may think you're risky, but you're really not. And you want to have a higher ROI, but it's not going to be given to you. You got to go out and earn it. That's the kind of bridge I try to understand with these people. Risk and return. That trade-off is like foreign to people. Just like, I just tell them, look.
I've lectured before on risk reward, and a lot of people think that high risk means high reward. And I try to talk them off of that mistaken understanding. High risk is just high risk. The reward may be little or no reward. If you want to get rich in a hurry, then be able to catch a pass at 80 miles an hour over the middle in an NFL game and hope that your career is not ended 30 seconds later when the linebacker puts you in the ground at an equal rate of speed. So there's risk reward everywhere. And I think that that's a good point. I struggle a lot with expectations. People who says, well, I want to get rich. I go, fine. I'm not against it, but I will explain later why that's probably a misfocus, but we'll come back to that. But they seem to think that there's I call it entitlement, that they think, well, all I got to do is show up and boom, I'm going to get rich. And it's either because what they're seeing on Shark Tank, or if they actually looked at the stats on Shark Tank investments, they're not that good. And these are supposedly the best people in the world, making investment decisions. And the failure rate, the performance rate is really not much different from any other
it's really not,
set of investments. And if it were that easy, there would be a lot more people making money. In fact, Andy would quit probably, advising other people just invest his own money, become rich. And, but it's something that we still have confusion. I think students particularly who think that, well, I just need to open up a storefront and I'm going to make a lot of money. They don't understand what needs to be done. They don't understand the risk that will interfere with that. And without understanding that, then they can't communicate that clearly to people who may give them funding they need to run that storefront. And this is where this is my daily battle of trying to help people understand what is a business, what represents a stable, strong, reasonable business, and then how do you communicate that effectively to people who may or may not care about what you're doing.
Risk and return, big on that. They just got to understand, like you pointed, they got to understand that.
They got to. And I see things moving forward here with artificial intelligence playing a role. I'm currently doing a series in my newsletter on LinkedIn on the future of raising funding. And almost everything ties back to smarter investors, smarter business people. And part of the way they get smarter is to be using artificial intelligence to gather more information, to do more assessment, to reach a deeper, better understanding before making any decisions. And so I actually am optimistic that we're going to move forward towards a higher level of literacy, but it's not an overnight. It's going to be a kind of
No,
a generational, transformational type of a change.
yeah, I agree on that, Carl, for sure. The other thing the students tell me uh, that a lot of them are thinking about this after they go through my class there, the one you help on. Uh, they find out, the risk and the business plan, all the trade-offs you got to make. A lot of them are saying this: they're going to go out and work for a company, build up a lot of capital on their own. Then they go out. They don't need anybody. They don't need the SBA. They don't need the angel investors. Because I said you got to have something to fall back on. Because once you start to borrow money from somebody, SBA or otherwise, or through equity angel investors, that that takes on a life of its own. So a lot of them are telling me they want to do that. Maybe just work real hard, build up a big cash account, and then maybe they'll go with the entrepreneurial. Maybe they won't. We change between ages of 20 and 30 a lot. As I told them, they will too. You can wake up a 30-year-old and you're going to be a different person than you were at 20. It has to do with your education, your career started. So I tell them, says, well, look, if you're not as risky as you thought, based upon that risk tolerance test, then go out and work, build up some cash capital, then maybe take your business plan and think about it maybe 5 or 6 years from now after you're out of college and take a look at it. But just dive into this thing, like you say, oh, I'm going to make money, open the Field of Dreams approach, build it, they will come. I'm sorry. No, maybe in Hollywood it works that way. And back to Shark Tank, that's all about ratings anyway, Nielsen ratings, and it's Hollywood at work.
It's all about entertainment,
That's what it is. It's entertainment.
And the thing is, I don't think it provides a good learning platform. I think that's what causes me most grief is people come to me and then they'll start talking Shark Tank, and I'm going like, well, they skipped over like 25 critical elements in order to get you on stage, so you can be on stage for 30
Yeah,
seconds and be
that's
voted up or
true.
down
That's
and
true.
get some kind
Yeah.
of a check. And people don't understand that. I have clients who have applied to Shark Tank. Some have been accepted. One even received a proposal and turned it down. And people just don't understand that what's being offered there is not going to be oversized or outsized just because you're on Shark Tank. If you're only making 11% rate of return to begin with, you're not going to be attractive to anybody on Shark Tank.
Nope.
And two, as I put it, if you give up 11%, then you're doing all the work for somebody else. So what's the point? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so you've got to find where you fit, and you've got to know what you can accomplish, and you have to understand your business. You have to be the world's expert on your own business before you can go out and get anybody to join you as an investor or a partner or anything else. And I think this is a form of literacy that is still missing for most people out there starting businesses, is they simply don't know, don't understand. And I like the idea of apprenticing, going back to the guilds and so forth, where I tell people, if you want to start your own business, I would stop. I'll find you an entrepreneur. I'll pair you with that entrepreneur for 2 years, 3 years. And if they happen to have a unicorn and you get super rich, good for both of you. But if they
Mm-hmm.
happen to struggle through their business, just like every other business, you'll learn a lot, and you'll learn it on their dime, not on your dime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cheaper, less risky way to go.
One thing too, the one student I had come and talk to my class who was on Shark Tank, she thought she had 200,000 bucks. All of a sudden, she never heard from the guy again after the show. That was it. So that happens quite a bit. She said that they'll come on, yeah, you got your 200,000. They're hugging each other. You know how it works at the end of Shark Tank, doing high fives. But that one investor, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it was one of the five that sat out there. Never heard from that person again. Just never again. That
Yeah,
was it. That's
yeah.
Hollywood at
So
work.
it's Hollywood, and at the same time, what you agreed to is kind of more like a letter of intent,
Yep.
meaning here's the big terms, but we got to get into the detail. And I've seen one of Mark Cuban's agreements, uh, very explicit, detailed, protective agreement that is all about Mark Cuban and little or nothing about the business. And I'm not blaming Mark Cuban because it's his money, his investment. He wants to protect it. So he put in all the safeguards that he can afford to put into the agreement. It was at least twice as long as most agreements I work with, and they're all about Mark. And I appreciate that because it is his money, but people don't understand that these are not, the fairy godmothers passing out checks, and not looking to see what you're going to do with the money. It's all business.
Yep.
So anyway, this brings us to the end of an hour. We've had quite a bit of conversation here, and I want to thank all of our audience who has been here with us today. Um, for being with us during this show. And so come back next week. My guest next week will be Tom Fry, who is one of the world's leading futurists. I think, Andy, you know Tom, don't you?
I've heard of him. Yes, yes, sir.
And I've worked with Tom. He is kind of a walking miracle in his ability to not forecast the future, but to tell you where this truck and this truck may converge, at an intersection 10, 15 years down the road. And if we have good working traffic lights at that time, this may be a wonderful intersection. And if we don't, it may be a train wreck. So he's very good at seeing large trends which will impact us. And he's often, off, but it's a matter of time, not that he's wrong. So I'm still waiting for his autonomous cars prediction to come through. But great person. So we'll be back next week. Andy, thank you for being here today, representing the University of Denver, one of my favorite institutions of higher education, and talking about entrepreneurial finance and all the things that we're working on to help young people become entrepreneurs of the future.
Yeah,
so
that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do, Carl. Thanks a lot. Pleasure. Thanks a lot, Carl. Take care.
Yeah, hang on for a minute.